What up, guys? Forgot I had not plugged in the microphone. Let me just check it. All right, I think we're good. What's up, everybody? Nice. I wonder if this idiot will consider formulating his own thoughts for this. So far, all I've heard is him parroting Oakley. Good one, bro. What a moron. What's up? What's up? Awesome having you on Ranty's awesome. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was cool. What's up, bro? Thanks for the shout out. Yeah, I jumped on Ranty's stream earlier. It was pretty cool. We had a nice little conversation. Gravy got the flowing. Gravy got the flowing. What's up, everybody? This is my man right here. Helped me get a microphone. So much love to this guy right here. He's a legend. He helped me out a lot. So now y'all can hear me. So yeah, what's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? Hey, brother. Hello, hello. Smash the Rogans up. Smash the Rogans up. Some people call it the like button or the thumbs up, but it's the Rogans up. All right, good times. Okay, so let's just get into it. We have some breaking news. There's been a Rogan spotted. He crawled out of his sunken hole of depravity and sodomy because he heard the mention of fancy pants. So yeah, breaking news. Rogan has been spotted. So now's the perfect time to smash the Rogans up because Joe Rogan looks like a human thumb, and this is an actual 2-size image of how big he is. Which got me to thinking. Let's see here. So that's a little baby right there. And this is an adult Yoda we got here. What you have learned and learn you must. As you can see, he looks a lot like a grappler, and he likes to talk backwards because these people love to invert things. So we fixed it for him. You must unlearn what you have learned. You can see him doing a little grappler gesture down here, where it certainly appears that way. We know he's holding the stick. We get it. You must unlearn what you have learned. And of course, the background is the fantasy world that people think they live in. This cartoon CGI ball that defies the basic laws of physics, wherein which the atmosphere of the Earth exists linear to a pressurized system. In fact, our pressurized system exists linear to a vacuum known as space, a near vacuum without a physical barrier to contain the gas pressure. And that is, of course, what tonight's stream is about. So yeah, good times, man. And to speak on this, you must unlearn what you have learned. Typically, some of the smarter people, it's harder to break them out of the indoctrination or to wake them up to the flat earth truth because they've learned so much. They've gone to school, they've studied, they've taken up professions that utilize this misinformation and misunderstanding. And so they've learned way more. So there's way more that they have to unlearn. I think that's a big problem that we see with trying to wake people up. So, okay, let's just see what we got going on here. So if any of y'all have seen my debate with McChange's Tune, I asked him, well, how do you explain the necessary antecedent to gas pressure being a physical barrier? Because, of course, your model claims that it isn't a physical barrier. And he said, no, gas pressure doesn't need a physical barrier. I said, okay, well, can you provide for me one single example in all of mankind that would demonstrate that's the case, that would support your postulation or your claim that gas pressure doesn't need a physical barrier. Can you please just substantiate that claim with an observation? Any experiment will do. Of course, there is not one that exists. He attempted to show a video of someone going up to a higher altitude and the pressure decreasing, which is retarded because, of course, it's going to continue to decrease and there's pressure above it. And that doesn't answer the question about why is the pressure even able to be here in the first place. And that shows you the level of intellectual dishonesty that we're dealing with. Globers cannot even concede that the atmosphere would be the anomaly to the physical law of gas pressure. They can't even concede that, right? Because if they could, then we can move on to the next problem, which is where they, invoke this deified mystical force known as gravity. But we can't even get that far with most globers, which is what was going on in that debate, was like communicating with a toddler, because he wouldn't even concede the inevitable, the unarguable. He would not even concede that there was no experiment or observation that could ever show physical containment not being there, not existing, not being present for there to be gas pressure. So anyway, that's basically the base premise here. Is the question that any flat earther that's been a flat earther for a while has known or heard or understands is one of our best arguments against the globe, and that is simply that the necessary antecedent to gas pressure is a physical barrier. So we'll get in on that, but I do want to show some love to this video right here. So this is Indio 007. Go sub and show them some love. Don't be lame and greedy with your subs and your thumbs, your Rogan's ups, because that is a version of supporting, and support what you like or it goes away. So let's watch this. I think that the audio will be fine. And we'll just check out this video. It's short. Well, just a second, because I don't know what they think they're doing. All right, here we go.
Of the horizon that you see is a geometric horizon.
Now that it's been dismantled, you don't claim that.
Well, we've never claimed that.
So as you saw, I said the 2,000-year-old claim that boats disappear over the horizon, over the curvature of the earth, has been falsified. And then just listen to the beginning of this again.
We don't claim that the horizon that you see is a geometric horizon.
Now that it's been dismantled, you don't claim that.
Well, we've never claimed that.
We've never claimed that, he said. So typical blatant dishonesty. But yeah, obviously that's me. He threw at the beginning. I thought it was pretty cool. So Show him some love. Again, that is Indio 77. Go show him some love. He's got some other good videos. Cool stuff, cool stuff. So let's just move on here. Talk to y'all for a second. What's going on, bro? What's up, what's up, what's up? Yeah, McChange's tune is a clown, dude. All right, cool. So yeah, let's go figure out this mystical problem that seems to elude the cognitive grasp of Glovers. So as you see here, definition of gas pressure. Pressure is a force exerted by the substance per unit area on another substance. The pressure of a gas is the force that the gas exerts on the walls of its container. Okay. Cool, cool. Let's go to the heart of the beast themselves. Well, actually, we'll go there in a second. You know, just another, they're all going to say the same thing because it's obvious that the necessary antecedent to pressure is containment. They invoke this mystical deified version of containment that doesn't exist anywhere else. It can't be substantiated. But of course, that isn't what pressure actually requires. Pressure is a force exerted by the substance per unit area on another substance. The pressure of a gas is the force that the gas exerts on the walls of its container, which is what we just read. When you blow air into a balloon, the balloon expands because the pressure of air molecules is greater on the inside of the balloon than the outside. Pressure is property which determines the direction in which mass flows. Mass, i.e. matter. If the balloon is released, the air moves from a region of high pressure to a region of low pressure. Oh, does it now? Because apparently this is negated whenever there's a vacuum linear to our pressurized system here on Earth, because of the invoking of a deified, unsubstantiated, elusive force known as gravity. All right, now we'll go to the belly of the beast themselves. NASA. This is a NASA resource. Okay. The molecular definition of pressure. From the kinetic theory of gases, a gas is composed of a large number of molecules that are very small relative to the distance between molecules. The molecules of a gas are in a constant random motion and frequently collide with each other in the walls of any container. The molecules possess the physical properties of mass, again, i.e. matter, momentum, and energy. The momentum of a single molecule is the product of its mass, again, i.e. matter, and velocity, while the kinetic energy is 1/2 the mass times the square of the velocity. As the gas molecules collide with the walls of a container, as shown on the left of the figure, the molecules impart momentum to the walls, producing a force perpendicular to the wall. The sum of the forces of all of the molecules striking the wall divided by the area of the wall is defined to be the pressure. The pressure of a gas is then a measure of the average linear momentum of the moving molecules of a gas. The pressure acts perpendicular normal to the wall. The tangential shear component of the force is related to the viscosity of the gas. So this is NASA themselves giving us the molecular definition of pressure, and they've used the word container and wall a plethora of times in one singular paragraph. So yes, obviously it is common sense that the necessary antecedent to gas pressure is a physical barrier, and of course our atmosphere has gas pressure. Atmosphere, because there is no sphere. It does kind of roll off the tongue, you know. I think the wizardry kind of got us on that one. Atmosphere. I mean, I hear flat earthers say it all the time. You know, it kind of slipped in underneath us. Atmosphere. Okay, it sounds a little better than plane, right? But there is no sphere. But nevertheless, for all intents and purposes, we'll just call it the atmosphere. and the atmosphere has gas pressure, right? That's one of the things with Changes Tune. McLooney Tune said, you know, was that it didn't really matter if there was a physical barrier because of his deified force known as gravity. And, like I said earlier, it's impossible for these people to even concede that this would be an anomaly. The atmosphere would inherently be an anomaly to the physical law of all other observable phenomena regarding gas pressure. And McLooney Tunes at one time, when asked about the gas pressure, I said something about gas pressure, and then he said atmospheric pressure, and I said, does the atmosphere have gas in it? So that's kind of the world that we live in, when we're talking to these toddlers known as globers. And again, to clarify, if you think the Earth is a globe, I don't call you a glober. I don't call you a globe zealot or a religious zealot, or I don't even consider myself to be flat smacking you. Those are for the people that look directly into the face of contradictory evidence and they double down ignorantly, arrogantly. It's typically a lot to do with ego and lack of information, ignorance. And so that's when you get this title that's well-deserved of being a religious zealot, a globe zealot, a glober. Okay, and that's what McLooney Tunes is, of course, because he cannot even concede that this would be an anomaly. So what can you do with people like that? That shows blatant dishonesty when it comes to an intellectual forum. It's laughable. It can only exist in this little paradigm of online content in an online community on YouTube where gammas roam free, right? And as we've seen in the real world, it takes a lot of guts to come out. Rogan's been hiding for years. Someone mentioned lollipops and fancy pants, and he just jumped out of his little fort of sodomy and was seen onlooking, waiting for the fancy pants to arrive because he likes to change out his wardrobe and increase the number of bedazzles he has on his jeans. And if you think that's a joke, this grown man, actually wears bedazzles on his jeans. Austin, why do you feel the need to keep going at Joe Rogan? Well, because he's a puppet, he's a gatekeeper, and he gets his talking points from Assad, allegedly. So I just slay the wizards, and Owen Benjamin exposed that dude, and of course he is correct. It's pretty obvious if you look at Joe Rogan. He is the definition of a gatekeeper, and he controls the Overton window, and we shall expose him every single stream. So anyway, moving on. Let's see. Of course, the definition for gas pressure is that it has to have a container, walls, container, walls, container, walls, right? This is obvious. So again, globers are claiming that the atmosphere is the one exception to this rule, right? So they invoke the deified force of gravity. And I thought about it. Could still do it, I guess, but I thought about showing y'all the interaction between me and McToon on Facebook, because it really it would help guide this to show you exactly what they say, but I won't put them all the way out on blast. It's all good. So what ends up happening is people just say gravity because that's the word that they were taught. And I like to always say this, when you were first introduced to the globe, 5 years old, 6 years old, whenever you were, you looked at the globe and you were like, wait, what? What about the people on the bottom? How would they not fall off? And then your teacher, who probably has a lower IQ and doesn't even understand any of the concepts that she's teaching children, she regurgitated the word gravity. And you're like, what's that? And they're like, oh, it's just a force that holds you to the ball. Like, oh, okay, that's the first question I asked, but can you tell me what it is? But they don't know, of course. Modern science can't tell you what it is. Neil deGrasse Tyson can't tell you what it is. So I asked McToon on Facebook today, after it's been a week since the debate, right? And it's been like pulling teeth to even get him to concede anything and to get to further the conversation, which is why the debate was only so valuable, in my opinion, and it was quite exhausting. But anyway, I digress. So I asked him, okay, well, which gravity exactly is it that you're invoking to explain, the containment of gas pressure in the atmosphere on Earth? And he said Both of them. I was like, okay, that's cool, bro. So you are invoking Newtonian gravity. And I was like, that was actually superseded in 1915. And he says, no, it's not. And Newtonian gravity is a fact, right? Well, what is Newtonian gravity? Newton's law of universal gravitation is usually stated that every particle attracts every other particle in the universe with a force, which is directly proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between their centers. Okay, well, over here in the real world, detached from the nonsense that is heliocentrism, we like to actually back up things that we say instead of just saying the word force. Okay, so it has never been proven to be such a thing. And it's not that there isn't some argument for it. I, of course, think that gravity is nothing more than incoherent dielectric acceleration. I would actually go as far to say it's quite provable. We can do experiments to demonstrate exactly how this works. Everything is dielectric. Electrostatic if you prefer, but dielectric more specifically. Everything inherently is dielectric because it has matter, and then it has a relationship within the medium, the universal background, the absolute frame of reference, the field of energy that is the ether. It receives energy from that. So anything that falls to the ground inherently has an electrostatic relationship with the ground it's falling to. More specifically, again, dielectric acceleration. Even more specifically, it's incoherent dielectric acceleration. You can call it incoherent magnetism because dielectric acceleration is magnetism. It's super, super, super weak. Okay, so that's the truth about gravity. It is dependent on the proportionate density, the relative density relationship. So typically that's air, but of course, if you remove the air from a vacuum, then it's still a relative density. It's just void of. It's just has much less disturbance, or much less. What's the word? Air to fight against. Whatever the word is. So it's crazy. It's such a simple word. But yeah, so anyway, when something falls, it's just the effect. If you measure it, it's just the measurement, the metrical representation of the downward acceleration. Math is nothing more than a description. Dumb people will equate and conflate the metrical description known as math, right? Just a description, the metrical representation of downward acceleration being the effect. They will conflate that to the causality, the imposed cause of this mystical force known as gravity, right? Well, that just doesn't work. It doesn't really matter how much you slam on your keyboard and say it over and over, or how much you scream and break down and implode live time on camera as your ball religion's being ripped from your dying hands. It simply doesn't matter. Math is a description. Science is supposed to explain things. Huge difference in descriptions and explanations. In fact, what we do is we take an observable phenomena and then we introduce a hypothesis. We have an independent variable in which we can control, and that is how we deduce it. Explanations, i.e. science. Descriptions, mathematical equations, those come after the fact so that we can replicate the hypothesis and the experimentation more adequately in the future. Okay, so that's all that it is. It is a description. 9.8 meters per second squared is a metrical representation, a metrical description of downward acceleration. That is all that it is. So before we move on, I just got a ton of comments that popped up. I guess it has like a lag to it. We changes tune. Yeah, that's his name. We changes tune. I've heard him invoke the fact that boats disappear over the curvature, and now we never see the geometric horizon. Yeah, for sure. Go show this dude some love. Yeah, always gotta slay the wizards. I went up too far. Indeed, it does. I have to agree. The Earth certainly does have firmament. All right. Yeah, so I mean, of course, that's the whole postulation, right? The necessary, vital, has to be there. The necessary antecedent is gas pressure, right? Or to gas pressure is physical containment. So that's just what it is. A physical container has to be there. It is necessitated by the pressure. And we just read the definitions. I don't understand why these Glovers can't understand it. Smash the Rogans up, by the way. Help us break the algorithms. All right, so anyway, let's just move on. So, yeah, of course, this is postulated to be a force. It simply has never been substantiated, and this was done away with. It doesn't seem like people want to accept it. Here's a quote from Isaac Newton himself. I'm sure a lot of people have seen this, but we'll check it out anyway. It is inconceivable that inanimate brute matter should, without the mediation of something else, which is not material, operate upon and affect other matter without mutual contact, as it must be if gravitation in the sense of Epicurus be essential and inherent in it. And this is one reason why I desired you would not ascribe innate gravity to me, that gravity should be innate, inherent, and essential to matter, so that one body may act upon another at a distance through a vacuum without the mediation of anything else, by and through which their action and force may be conveyed from one to another, is to me so great an absurdity that I believe no man who has in philosophical matters a competent faculty of thinking can ever fall into it. Gravity must be caused by an agent acting constantly according to certain laws, but whether this agent be material or immaterial, I've left open to the consideration of my readers. Okay, so that's pretty point blank there, and the point you take out of it is Isaac Newton didn't postulate an explanation. Okay, so Newtonian gravity again claims to be a force. Newton's law of universal gravitation is usually stated that every particle attracts every other particle in the universe with a force which is directly proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square root of the distance between their centers. Newton himself was like, I don't know what's going on, but I think it's pretty retarded to ever think that it could possibly act on one body from another body through the vacuum of space. Please do not ascribe innate brute matter or innate gravity to me. Okay, no problem. It doesn't exist. We won't ascribe it to you, brother. Okay, so when was Newtonian gravity replaced with Einsteinian? Maybe more adequately said, superseded. 1915. So that is over 100 years ago. Okay. Well, what is gravity? In general relativity, gravity is not a force between masses. Instead, gravity is an effect of the warping of space and time in the presence of mass. Without a force acting upon it, an object will move in a straight line, blah, blah, blah. This explains why all objects fall at the same rate. That is not true, okay? They do not all fall at the same rate, and it is well known that it is just agreed upon average that is attributed to this deified force known as gravity. Okay, so anyway, under the replacement, again, going back to 1915, gravity is just an effect. And yeah, that's true, right? Like that, I agree. I agree for sure. Gravity is just an effect, in my opinion, right? The way that I see it, very simply, the ether is the universal background, the absolute frame of reference. It acts as a slight compression onto the material world. There's a natural frame of reference of up and down. Okay, it's just there because there's up and there's down. Like we live on a stationary flat plane. There's up, there's down. Right? Something can only fall down because of relative density, and there is an electrostatic relationship within all matter, but it is just a resultant, a hybrid, an effect. It's negligible. Gravity is dependent on the matter itself, the dielectric nature of the matter itself, and then, of course, the acceleration is measurable. Gravity does not have autonomous field modality. That means that it is not a self-governing field, so it cannot be a force. It's not even a self-governing field. In fact, gravity is an anti-field. It's an acceleration to counter space. It's dependent on other factors. It is not independent. It is far from this deified mystical force that keeps the the oceans bending convexly around the spherical exterior of a moving, spinning object, and then causing the immensity of the moon to revolve around it, and all this other nonsense that Kepler's laws imposes, all these gravitational waves, the sphericity of all of these different bodies and these different relative coinciding vectors of these celestial bodies. It doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, it would never happen. So anyway, back to, well, actually, just to kind of give you, again, we had Newton saying, let's just read it again. We had Newton saying that gravity should be innate, inherent, and essential to matter, so that one body may act upon another at a distance through a vacuum without the mediation of anything else, by and through which their action and force may be conveyed from one to another, is to me so great an absurdity, I believe no man who has in philosophical matters a competent faculty of thinking could ever fall into. Okay, cool. Let me try and make this a little better. All right, and then we see here again that in 1915, Einstein uses new theory of gravity to supposedly do something he didn't actually do, just reification. In general relativity, gravity is not a force between masses. Instead, gravity is an effect of the warping of space and time in the presence of mass. Okay, let's just discuss this. I'm sure many of you have heard me address this. This is a very simple concept to grasp, in my opinion. It's very, very simple. In fact, it's quite objective. Warping of space and time. What is space, you ask? Okay, it's just a conceptual abstraction of nothing. That's literally what it is. It's a conceptual abstraction of nothing. That's what that is. And what is time? Of course, time is also a concept relative to human existence. Our attempt, or well, I guess it's a successful attempt, but we quantify the human existence. Time is nothing more than a measurement of magnitude from one point to another, between 2 points. Time is a conceptual abstraction, as is space. To attribute a physical property of curved, warping, to a privation, to conceptual abstractions is void of any logic. It simply doesn't work. So because of this fuzzy-haired crackpot incestuous grabbler, we've decided that space and time, conceptual abstractions, can have physical properties. Now, I've explained this numerous times, but maybe some people are new. Space is a privation. It's a lack of something. It is nothing in and of itself. A perfect analogy would be that space is analogous to a shadow, in the sense that shadow is nothing in and of itself. It's just the absence of light. It's a privation. So it has an attribute. Maybe it's a little bit cooler when you stand in the shadow, unless we're talking about the moonlight in shadow, of course, but it doesn't have any properties because it is nothing more than a privation. It can only have attributes. It cannot have properties. An important distinction that Nikola Tesla laid out. All right, this is Occam's razor. This is very simple to understand. Something that is a concept that doesn't actually exist, right? Certainly a conceptual abstraction regarding a privation could never have a physical property. It can't. So curved space can exist inherently. Warped space-time doesn't work inherently. That's just the way that it is. It doesn't even need to go any further than that. I know these Globers don't like to accept that, but that's just the way that it is, bro. All right, let me come chat with y'all for a little bit, and then we will move on. Oh, yeah, but just a reminder. People actually believe that this dude jumped and could see the curvature of Earth from 128,000 feet, although their little religious leader, Neil deGrasse Tyson, has since come out and refuted that himself, saying that at 128,000 feet, you'd never see the curvature, and this was just because of the lens. Yeah, you don't say. We all know. The question is, why did y'all lie? But anyway, according to them, beyond this Earth here, there is a vacuum, but we have a pressurized system on Earth. So I hope you're fully grasping this if you are by chance on here. And a globe earther, we encourage you to break out of the indoctrination, because it's nothing more than theoretical conceptual abstractions built off the back of equations from mathematicians And they all stem from the reification fallacy, the theory of relativity, in which this incestuous scrabbler, also known as Albert Einstein, reified space. Good times. All right, cool. Looks like they are talking together, talking back and forth, which is cool. Keep the gravy flowing. And we will move on. We shall move on. All right. So, yeah, very simply, man, they admit themselves since 1915 gravity is just an effect. Of course it is. And they will never be able to prove anything other than that because it is nothing more than that. In fact, I've offered you a much more adequate explanation. This is not because Austin is some genius. I dropped out of college. I mean, I'm certainly not dumb, but it is much more about the fact that I went and read the fatherheads of electrical field theory, right? The current modern electrical grid all relies off of that base interpretation and understanding. A lot of people that have watched me know this too, but Charles Produce Steinmetz, Oliver Heaviside, Nikola Tesla, they all understood that there was an ether, an absolute frame of reference, a universal background, and they also understood that gravity is negligible. It's a resultant. It's a hybrid. It's a modality of the natural field that exists, which is only magnetism. Magnetism is the only autonomous field modality in the world. Gravity, just incoherent dielectric acceleration. It's a resultant. Not to beat a dead horse, I just hope you kind of understand because it's quite important to understand. Yeah, so basically, if this is real, which they could show Globers this right here nowadays, and they'd be like, oh, yeah, that adds up. I'm not even kidding. If that had a NASA stamp on it, people would argue it. Here's an infamous no stars picture. So yeah, anyway, very simply, if this Earth here, which of course we can't even get this far, to be honest, because curvature can't be substantiated. So there is no ball. Okay, there is no ellipsoid with a radius of 3,959 miles and a circumference of 24,901 miles. That just can't be substantiated. Very simply, it isn't the case. But if you were to say that it was the case, it claims to have this atmospheric pressure, a pressurized system, and to be surrounded by the vacuum of space. And as we read, pressure naturally goes to, where does it say this? The air moves from a region of high pressure to a region of low pressure. Second law of thermodynamics. I think we all know this. You know, if you put a balloon in a vacuum, what will happen? It will expand. Okay, so, and then of course NASA themselves knows what pressure is. Whatever, what's it matter? Yeah, so dude, we don't live here, bro, and it couldn't even exist. It couldn't even theoretically exist. So the blunt truth of the situation is that the Earth is a closed dynamic system. There's a lot of gas being introduced at the surface level, and it also cycles, does the gas. There's many different factors to take into consideration, but the incoherent magnetism of the Earth isn't one of them. It isn't at all. None. Okay, because as gravity or as incoherent mass increases, the magnitude of pull decreases. So it's negligible because obviously the mass of the Earth, again, mass just being matter, is really big. It's incoherent. As it gets bigger, it has an inversely proportionate relationship with its magnitude of pull, which means it's incredibly weak. Okay, so nothing all the way up in the atmosphere has anything to do with gravity. Nothing. Okay, it is a closed dynamic system. We understand the necessary antecedents to pressure being a physical barrier. It must have one because that's what all observable phenomena shows us. All of it ever in the history of mankind. That's all that the observable phenomena will ever show us. And then there are different things we need to understand to fully understand the gradient, in my opinion, that we don't really have the full access of information to the variance of details we need. So, you know, if there is a firmament, what are the parameters of it? What is the distance to it? Exactly how high does it go? What does it emit, if you want to say that? What is its dielectric permittivity and magnetic permeability? How does the sun and the moon factor in to this? Now, I mean, of course, I can speculate, and that's what I do, because it's also, it's pretty funny. Gamma's just like going a tailspin when you speculate. It's like, bro, free your mind, my man. You're operating at a very low frequency. The way that I see it is this inertial plane, which is the green line here, would be the Earth. The North Pole is the center, or the source point, if you will, of the magnetic accompanying toroidal field. If you are familiar with sacred geometry, this bright light right here would be the number 9, which of course sacred geometry, Fibonacci sequence, God's fingerprints, is all over everything. Anyway, so there's said to be a magnetic mountain, Mount Meru, in the middle. If anyone's new and thinks this is a crazy conspiracy theory, you cannot go within 500 miles of every direction of the North Pole. So yeah. Anyway, and this is all about pressure mediation, right? And that's what's so important to understand is it makes perfect sense that we have a gradient. Okay, it makes perfect sense because of the encompassing toroidal magnetic field. So take it or leave it. But anyway, the Earth acts as a giant battery or alternator, if you want to say that, if you would like. And then in my opinion, my postulation, my speculation, is that the sun and the moon, they are basically being powered by this encompassing toroidal field, and then they have a dielectric or magnetic nature to both of them, of course, and they're basically just being powered around this battery going over top of us, and they create the days and the seasons. Here's another image for you to kind of understand it. And I think that it's important to grasp that when something falls down, when downward acceleration happens, again, gravity isn't a force because it doesn't have autonomous field modality. So it isn't a self-governing field. In fact, it's an anti-field. And, you know, downward acceleration is just acceleration to counter space. That's all that it is. It's incoherent dielectric acceleration, incoherent magnetism. It has an electrostatic relationship with what it's falling to inherently, because all matter is electrostatic, but it's negligible. It's super weak because the Earth's mass, i.e. matter, is pretty big, I would say, which is why it's weaker. And again, go look up Good Times for All, GUD times number 4, all. It's also his videos from Zach. Good Times for All is on Globebusters, where we show you an actual observation, actual science, actual experimentation, where as you increase the incoherent mass, the magnitude of pull gets weaker. And to clarify, which it does coincide with the idea of pressure, a very important distinction that I think a lot of people don't understand, or they don't grasp the significance of the distinction, is that, well, magnets don't actually attract. Two magnets do not attract to each other. Rather, they accelerate towards each other, but more specifically, they're accelerating to the null pressure point between. It's pressure mediation. Everything is about pressure mediation. Okay, so pretty important, in my opinion, to grasp that everything is about pressure mediation. Incoherent dielectric acceleration is all that gravity is. Downward acceleration, it has an electrostatic relationship with what it's falling to, because everything has an electrostatic relationship within the ether if it is material, and it's negligible. It's extremely weak, and it's accelerating to counter space. It's pressure mediation, and again, as magnets attract, all they're really doing is accelerating to the null pressure point in between them. It's all about pressure mediation. And so there you go, which I wouldn't even probably go that far into speculation with any of these globe zealots or in a debate or anything, because they're way too dishonest. They don't even deserve that much honesty from me, and they're not in the mental state of honesty to even appreciate that level of conversation or to let it flourish. because when you're defending a religious belief with no evidence and you're going to turn your head to all contradictory evidence, all you do is stifle the intellectual depth of a conversation. You certainly will never add to it. And, there's a pretty famous saying, I believe it is from the scriptures, that it's to argue with fools will be foolish, is basically my paraphrase. And, let the dead bury the dead. What can you do about it? So, this is true, man. You must unlearn what you have learned. You must unlearn what you have learned. Okay, because this little incestuous scrabbler has derailed science with a theory of relativity, which is a reification fallacy that attributed a physical property to a privation. Curved space could never exist. Equal and opposite reaction would make the curve straighten out. And of course, simply space being a privation, it cannot have a physical property, period. He reified space, a conceptual abstraction representing nothing. So yeah, man, I mean, not only do we need to unlearn what we have learned to discover the truth of the nature of the earth, but all science needs to unlearn all of their nonsensical atomism, the cult of bombarding particles, the materialistic perspective of this earth, where everything has to be materialistic, because if I can't count it, it doesn't exist. And that's kind of what we got in on Ranty's show. I'm like, that's the problem, bro. Everyone thinks they have to quantify things. If I can't quantify, it doesn't exist. Well, that's objectively not true. It doesn't matter how upset it makes you or how much you want to, lash out about it. The ether is postulated to be the absolute frame of reference, a force field, a field of energy. So it's by nature, to actually even examine the true postulation of the ether, you have to concede that it would be immaterial. So to say you can't count it is disingenuous, it's dishonest, because you're not even truly addressing the postulation of what the ether is. And this isn't a new idea or new premise. This goes back to, again, the fatherheads of the electrical field theory that gave us the very modern electrical grid that we have to this day. And I prefer three people in particular: Oliver Heaviside, Charles Proto Steinmetz, and Nikola Tesla. You can read Faraday, Maxwell, Jeff and Minko's all right. I've only skimmed some of his stuff. I stick with Oliver Heaviside, Charles Proto Steinmetz, and Nikola Tesla. And Nikola Tesla is my favorite. I like the way that he breaks things down. He does a good job for me personally to be able to put pieces together. Everyone's different. So let me come chat with y'all for a little bit. See if y'all have got any questions. And of course, just to address this, you just, when you're asking a Glober over and over, man, look, bro, can you just, we're all interested. Thousands of us are waiting. We were truly interested. Can you offer one single example or observation or experiment that shows that gas pressure can exist without a physical barrier? They'll show you some experiment where there's some kind of gas pressure temporarily be escaping via the top because there's no lid of a container, right? Like it's I know it sounds retarded, but these people actually say this kind of stuff. And McChange's tune, McLooney Tunes, Magoon this is what he does. You know what I'm saying? It's pretty baffling. I don't know how you couldn't at least figure out your best argument overall yet, but whatever. This is still a container. I just took the top off the coffee. Still a container. This is a container. Okay. It's still physically contained. I mean, dude, it's that simple. You cannot show us something that has, and again, that just goes to show the level of dishonesty of these people. And some of these people are innocently doing this. It's a lifetime of indoctrination. Some of them are, vehemently being dishonest or intentionally being dishonest. So what can you do with people like that? That's why I speculated that maybe he's a shill, and I said that to his face during the debate because, just dishonesty shows intention. It's basically an admission of guilt. So there's that. Oh, look, it's a guy that isn't that smart but thinks he is smart, and he's a Gamma keyboard warrior. He doesn't know how to spell globe. He got auto-corrected, I'll be fair. The iPhone loves to correct the word globe. Globebusters looks like a bunch of idiots that can't get their own model unified because, spoiler, it doesn't work. Spoiler, ray of creation. We don't adhere to a definitive model. I'm sure that in your little la-la land where you appeal to authority and turn to authoritative figures to force feed you your religious belief that you don't even understand, and we understand far better than you, I can guarantee it. we're just honest, and we like to admit, well, we don't know exactly what the earth is. Well, let's try to figure it out and do trial and error. Eventually, this working model may evolve into something that's pretty close to being definitive. Of course, you're the guy who's sitting on the sideline as a gamma, cheering on the oppressing team that has kept all the information from us, and we're out here on the forefront, risking our livelihood, etc., to try and find out exactly what we were lied to about and what is missing, so we can formulate a definitive model. Because we aren't gamma males, some of us actually like to go take care of problems, and we actually care about the betterment of mankind and future generations, like the children being indoctrinated with the electron tomorrow at school. But you probably don't understand anything that's going on in this conversation. You just say things like that. So, just to definitively expose this little gamma, yeah, we don't even adhere to a definitive model. So good straw man, bro, and learn to maybe substantiate your own religious beliefs before you undermine someone else's honesty about what they don't know. Yeah, I'd much rather say I don't know than adamantly proclaim something that is provably false. So there's that. I can't help it, man. It's gamma. Self-projects and subversively act out for attention. Yep, this is Zach that made the video. And it's also, the video's on Glowbusters. It was mirrored. But go show my boy some love, support what you like. And what you should like is people that are actually spending their time doing experimentation and compiling information to help people learn and bring us all together. Because I can tell you, I haven't gotten to the realm of doing a lot of experimentation, which I definitely want to do. I've got a few things in mind, but it's still extremely time consuming. I'm constantly consuming information. But I'm consuming it for me too, of course. But the point is, it takes a lot of my time. I work, right? I have a full-time job. I work. And then while I'm compiling information, I come here and I try to at least go live once a weeknight and give you all some information. There's tons of people doing that kind of stuff, right? And so support what you like or it goes away. That's real. So our motives are pure. I can speak for most of us, or the ones that I've met and that I associate with. We're just trying to figure out the truth. But do know that it can be a bit exhausting at times. So support what you like or it goes away. The link is in the chat, as you can tell. So go show them some love and sub. And that's free for you anyway. So just go subscribe, hit the Rogans up. This is very true. I think this is why it was hidden from you. Flat Earth equals God, undeniably. And of course, creation is undeniable anyway. Again, sacred geometry, Fibonacci sequence, DNA alone proves God. The harmonic nature of existence in and of itself proves God. Consciousness proves God. The lack of science's ability to even identify where memories are proves God. There's tons of things that prove God. The perplexity and complexity of the eyeball alone proves God. I think you can actually distinguish between, I think it's 7 and 9 million colors. The low might be 4 million colors. The perplexity and complexity of the eyeball alone proves divinity, but geocentricity substantially proves divinity and creation, where it's so blatantly obviously it can't even be ignored or denied or debated. And that's why I think it was hidden from you. People can try to shuck and jive around the DNA or the Fibonacci sequence because they don't even understand it or they're ignorant of it, or the eyeball. But when we're talking about the fact that the earth is the center of everything and everything in the sky revolves over top of us and everything's much more local than we were told. The sun and the moon are made just for us. They're exactly the same size. When it was the night for the night sky, when it was from the day sky, you start to see, okay, well, earth itself proves God unequivocally, undeniably. And I think that's why we were lied to about it. But hey, don't want to get into the specifics of any theological discussion or anything. God is undeniably real. And if you know that God's real, that means that God made you. If there's a creator and you've been created, then that means that God made you as well as this earth that he made for you. If you know that God made you, then you understand the importance of life. You can't be controlled as easy. And they don't like that, right? Of course, because they'd rather be able to control their slaves. So if you have something to fight for, or you understand the importance of life, then you're not as easily controlled. Because if you don't believe in God and you adhere or subscribe to this nonsense methodology or philosophy or belief in materialism, that will only increase apathy and nihilism, and boom, you're very easy to control. So there you go. I don't know if you're saying rant or ranty. I like ranty too. Shout out to him. I just jumped on the show and chatted with him. If you're saying rant, I hope so, because that's all I do is rant. We are told the location of magnetic north moves. If this is true, why do you think this is? I don't know the specifics of that. I'd have to look into it, to be honest. Depends on what the movement is, or if that can even be substantiated, to be honest. I don't know. But, I mean, it would just have to do with the toroidal field. I wouldn't really think that it'd move a lot. I mean, slight fluctuation, sure, because there's an ether. There's actually an ether drift pretty clearly. So that would be my little limited speculation. Much love. Thanks for being here. Hey, bro, this is a legend. Iru, go sub to my boy's channel. This is indeed a legend that likes to ladle the gravy. Yeah, exactly, dude. I would have to agree. Magnetic north doesn't move. That sounds like a Glover myth. It does sound like that to me, but I don't know. As far as I can even see there being some resemblance of reality to that idea, it would just be that there's an ether drift. And I don't think the ether drift is resultant. I mean, the ether is never resultant in the sense that it's the universal background, but the drift is resultant to the toroidal field encompassed within the overall field of energy. So, there's my take. No doubt for sure. I agree. And yes, they do. Bob's a legend. Turns your mind to gravy. And, of course, this is my friend Nate, who thinks it's real cool to just always try and derail the show. I don't know who that is. So, yeah, for anyone that just jumped in here, all we were discussing is globe earthers don't even understand their own religion, but pressure is a force exerted by the substance per unit area on another substance. The pressure of a gas is the force that the gas exerts on the walls of its container. The necessary antecedent to gas pressure is physical container. That's just the way that it is. And globe earthers don't seem to understand it. And more adequately and accurately, they're just weak. They can't actually think for themselves. They're scared to not be a part of consensus. They really want to fit in with other people. They've made fun of people too long. They've appealed to their authoritative figures that are actually just theoretical math magicians and that are focused on conceptual abstractions and pure theoretical assumptions and nonsense. And they depend on them, and they think that gives them a position and a right to be arrogant and to try to make fun of other people or talk down to other people. And they're just completely wrong and void of even cognitively grasping the magnitude of the nonsense that their religion requires them to claim and to stand behind. But anyway, the necessary antecedent to gas pressure is the physical barrier. All observations, all observable phenomena shows us this. To claim that isn't the case, to claim that space, this near perfect vacuum, because no vacuum is actually perfect. There's still a few hydrogen atoms per cubic meter, but somehow this near perfect vacuum exists linear to a pressurized system, and it doesn't have a physical barrier. And this is the one time in the history of mankind and all observable phenomena that's the case. It's purely an anomaly. It's the only one of its kind. Just trust me on this. And so you ask them, can you give us any other example? Most of them will not concede that they cannot, but factually, objectively, they can't. And this, of course, because it's just a physical law of gas. It doesn't really matter, if anyone wants to admit it or not. That's their problem. Well, what is this person doing? Who's this person spamming this? No, you're good, bro. You're like a day one. I'm just saying that is obviously I'm in the middle of something. Look at all the love. All the love and the gravy. Everyone just spreading gravies to their biscuits. Thanks, bro. Yeah, Nate, bro, you're good. You're a day one, bro. I'm just saying. Dude, what is this energy weapon dude doing? Whatever, I don't care. So yeah, very simply, and hopefully globers, which I just happen to know that there are definitely some globe earthers in here right now. Can you please listen? Can you please listen, bro? The necessary antecedent to gas pressure is a physical barrier, right? We just discussed that. I don't want to just be redundant, but that's just the case. We can read another, source here that tells you that, oh man, that the pressure of gas is a force that the gas exerts on the walls of its container. The air moves from a region of high pressure to low pressure. Of course, it does. Second law of thermodynamics, the path of least resistance. NASA themselves uses the word wall like 8 times in this one paragraph definition. Molecular definition of pressure. The molecules of a gas are in constant random motion and frequently collide with each other and with the walls of any container, okay, because again, gas pressure necessitates a physical barrier. And then what these globers do is they invoke their mystical deified force known as gravity. They don't even know what gravity is, okay? They're just regurgitating their religious leaders. They'll be like, oh, you think you're smarter than Neil deGrasse Tyson? I don't know, honestly. Probably a lot of us are. But nevertheless, your appeal to authority means nothing to a real intellectual. So try actually substantiating your belief system. What gravity do you believe in? Do you know the difference in big G and little g? No, of course, these globers do not. Again, I call you a glober if you've been presented with tangible evidence against your religion over and over, and you laugh and you make fun and you spew ad homs and you attack and you divert and you never actually address the point with specificity and you double down in the face of contradictory evidence. You are then being a religious zealot. Ironically, as all of us flat earthers know, most of these religious zealots are actually the atheists. The atheists don't even realize that they're part of like a religious belief system made off of the doctrine, the man-made interpretation of nature, but it's inadequately drowned down or inaccurately drowned down with presuppositions, constantly begging the question, which the question is the nature of Earth itself. So the model cannot even be explained or sold or theorized without begging the question because there's no proof to even substantiate the model. But even if you give them that much, which they can't get that much objectively, there's no evidence for axial rotation or curvature. None, ever. There never will be because it's a stationary plane. So we're the crazy ones because we prefer observations and facts. Look how crazy we are. But anyway, the necessary antecedent to gas pressure is physical barrier. That's what all observation shows us. You invoke this mystical deified force known as gravity, but you don't even understand where gravity is. Perfect example is a lot of these people's hero from the Toon Squad. They think that McToon is so super smart. McChanges Toon, McLooney Tunes, McGoon, McCartoon, right? Everyone looks up to this dude, or well, not everyone, just a small group of people that don't want to think for themselves or do research, and they prefer their indoctrination bubble, and they're really comfortable being part of the majority and consensus, so they have to just cling on to it because it makes them feel smart to think that they have smart people on their side, right? Because that's what dumb people do. Shocker, or news break. So anyway, people think, mutual mass acceleration and proportionate mass, and gravity is a force. They don't understand that definition, which is Newtonian gravity, was superseded in 1915, which again, we demonstrated this right here. When was Newtonian gravity replaced with Einsteinian gravity? In November 1915. Very simple. And so it was replaced with the general relativity. Gravity is not a force between masses. Instead, gravity is an effect of the warping of space and time in the presence of mass. Of course, something cannot be a force, an imposed cause, and also an effect, okay? So whatever you want to think about it doesn't really matter. Newtonian gravity doesn't work. Einsteinian gravity doesn't work. Their modern interpretation, application, and connotation of gravity doesn't work on the cosmological level or the quantum level. Admittedly, under their own admittance, it doesn't work on those levels. And of course, it only works locally because it was derived from the observations within the frame of reference of the local nature of the Earth that they're attempting to understand. So it is a reification, and people that also don't even understand what they're invoking. This is what most people do. They're running around as puppets. They're indoctrinated and just regurgitating stuff that they don't even understand. Okay, but gravity is like 9.8 meters per second squared. That is how fast something falls, right? And again, it's just an agreed upon average. And there's a difference in the big G and the little g. And it's just an average. Everything has not fall at a constant speed. That's objectively not true. Again, this is agreed upon average, okay? And that's just the effects of downward acceleration being measured by a mathematical representation, a formula, numbers, okay? Math magicians running around with their formulas. That's all it is. Math is a description. Science is an explanation. Science explains things. Math describes things with numbers, okay? 9.8 meters per second squared is nothing more than the metrical representation of the effect of downward acceleration. It cannot be conflated to causality. There's an imposition of causality known as gravity being a force. This cannot be substantiated or proven in any way. Gravity is nothing more in all actuality than incoherent dielectric acceleration. It's completely negligible because of the compounding mass, i.e. matter, that is the Earth, and it has an inversely proportional relationship with the magnitude of pull. So we've kind of discussed this a few times now, but I don't think that the Globers really understand it. But as opposed to addressing any of this, they'll just rather run away and stay in their indoctrinated bubble of religion. And it's kind of painful to even watch it from their perspective. But yeah, so anyway, as you see here, we've discussed this already, but gravity is an effect of the warping of space and time. You cannot warp space and time. Space is a concept of nothing and a conceptual abstraction to represent nothing. Time is a conceptual abstraction to represent the quantification of human existence, a measurement of magnitude between 2 points. This is objective. This isn't arguable. This is just a fact. These are the facts. So just accept it. Wake up. It's no big deal. The Earth isn't a ball. It's 2020. We were lied to. A lot of you people think that the globe Earth is a real old idea. That isn't true. It wasn't even accepted or taught until the 20th century. Okay, so that means for the entirety of mankind, people knew the Earth was stationary, that there was a firmament, that it wasn't moving. And then just here recently in the 20th century, the grabblers have reintroduced the nonsense that is heliocentrism. Not reintroduced, but introduced it to the mainstream scale. And then, of course, with control of the dissemination of information and all the mainstream media, they've painted the illusion that this is an idea that goes way back. Also, people that don't understand anything about what they believe, they like to say things about how this was proven way back in the day with Aristophanes, and they don't even understand any of the presuppositions that he presupposed and begged the question of the very sphericity of the Earth. It works on a flat Earth too. So there's that. All you have to do is understand that it's divergent rays with a more local sun than it works on a flat plane. So the question is, why do you have to invoke such nonsense from so long ago that doesn't even work and isn't even actually accurate? There should be a plethora and millions of pieces of evidence for the globe Earth, but there isn't. So there you go. Also, Nate, to kind of briefly address your question, if you're asking what you asked me the other day, is couldn't you just prove the Earth was flat by going past the equator and traveling and comparing the times or whatever? You have to understand that the layout of the land is different. Okay, so you aren't fully taking all the things into consideration at all. Without bendy space-time, warp engines on starships couldn't exist. Yeah, dude. I think the craziest part is that people just don't understand what they're talking about. They don't even know what gravity is, and they say it over and over. And I've had conversations with people here right now that will say the word gravity over and over and over and over, but they don't understand it. The modern accepted consensus application of science is the bending of space-time, the warping of space-time, curved space. Okay, right? The incestuous scrabbler, we covered this little incestuous scrabbler right here, this fuzzy-haired crackpot that married his first cousin and then wanted to have sex with her daughter and wanted to marry her daughter, who looked at him as a father figure. He imposed a theory of relativity, which was a reification fallacy, and he made mass and energy interchangeable. He attributed a constant speed to light, which is nonsense. That isn't how it works, and that's been proven based on their own heliocentric model. I don't think a lot of people understand this, but for decades now, going all the way back to like the 50s, they've known that that the constant speed of light postulation is inaccurate, because what they observe, they see things with that connotation being applied to the observation. They see that things go 5, 6, 7, 8 times faster than the speed of light, thus proving it isn't a constant speed of light. It's variable. Of course it is variable, because it's actually nothing more than an ether perturbation modality. Light is an ether perturbation modality, a disturbance in the ether, a derivation of state. It has a rate of induction into the ether. We perceive the illumination of the rate of induction into the ether of this perturbation modality that is light. It's energy introduced into the ether field. We see the rate of induction. This explains instantaneous action at a distance. Okay, so no, light isn't a particle or a wave. It's definitively disproven that light is a physical particle known as a photon, because you can watch a laser go through water or glass and slow down 33% in glass, I believe, and then speed back up without an introduction of a new vector or a new energy source introduced to the path of the supposed physical photon traveling from point A to point B. For it to speed back up once exiting the medium, it would breach the law of conservation of energy. If you understand it isn't a physical particle, it's nothing more than an ether perturbation. What we perceive is only the relative manifestation, the illumination of the rate of induction into the ether. It's an ether perturbation modality. You don't need to explain that. It makes perfect sense. It's just our perception that is being changed because of the introduction to the additional medium, i.e. glass and water in this scenario. So if you understand all of this, then instantaneous action at a distance is no trouble, right? We don't have to come up with nonsense like, oh, well, light's a wave and a particle. No, it isn't a particle. I just definitively demonstrated to you, which is a very easily recreated experiment, how it can't be a physical particle traveling from point A to point B, period, definitively, objectively. Doesn't matter what you think. That's just objective. You're like, how could you possibly know this, Austin? You dropped out of college and there are scientists. Okay, well, the scientists are retarded. They're operating off of presuppositions. This doesn't change the objective nature of what I just said. If you think you can offer some form of an explanation, feel free to do it, but your little deified religious figures can't do it, because you can't do it. So anyway, it isn't a physical particle. They say it's a wave, but a wave isn't a thing. A wave is an effect. Okay, something is waving, right? The waves is just the manifestation of the effect, and that is how light travels, in a wave, a transversal movement, and it's a coaxial circuit. And then what they call photons is the dielectric pulse. So there's a little brief overcap, and we kind of discussed a little bit of that on Ranty Show, so go check it out. It's pretty cool. I'm going to run to the kitchen to get a drink, so I'm going to go back and shout out this dude. He threw me at the beginning of his video, which is pretty cool. So let's check it out. Again, Indio 007, go show him some love.
But we don't claim that the horizon that you see is a geometric horizon.
Now that it's been dismantled, you don't claim that.
Well, we've never claimed that.
Yeah, I think that video is pretty cool. So y'all should definitely check it out. It's pretty cool. It's just 2 minutes straight to the point. Because what globe earthers are saying now is that you can't see that, you can never see the geometric horizon, which is just nonsense. Well, of course you can't see it, but I'm saying it's just nonsense if the Earth was a globe. But the point that's real important to grasp here is for 5 years, we've all had globe earthers saying that that the boat disappears from the bottom up. That's what we were taught in school. That's the main postulation of historical evidence for the globe earth. That's what Bill Nye taught us when I was in like 5th grade. Like I still remember them rolling the TV in and showing us Bill Nye. So, it has objectively been taught as there is a physical obstruction of view due to the curvature of the earth derived from the geometric imposition of the radius, right, deduced from the circumference. That's objective. And most of you globe earthers have undoubtedly been saying that. Just like my debate with McToon, his evidence for curvature, he showed a horizon, saying it wasn't eye level. And then in the same debate, he conceded that the geometric horizon is never visible. So why are you showing me an image of a horizon if it's under your own admission and concession just an apparent horizon? And again, apparent horizon is redundant. They're all apparent. What the horizon is where the sky appears to meet the ground. It's optical. That's all the horizon is. That's why it fluctuates based on optical zoom, perspective limit, angular resolution, and the conditions of the refractive index, the atmospheric conditions of the day. We are objectively on the more logical side here. And here's a news break. It's because we're right. That's all it is. Flat earthers aren't claiming to know everything. We're just claiming to know what we do know, which is what observation shows us. You have to understand that there's some impending deception coming. They need space for it. And you need to wake up before it comes, bro. Because if you're still plugged into the box and you're still plugged into that lie, when the deception comes, it's going to be really hard not to fall for it. If you think that space is real and intergalactic civilizations are real and all this other nonsense. Oh yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know he was FE Core. No, he's super cool, dude. Because I jump on Discord a lot, and Indio's on there a lot. We have cool conversations all the time on 24/7 Discord server. And Nate, I would suggest you just jump on there and ask all the questions you could possibly think of, bro. So the Antarctic green would be the theoretical South Pole. Yes, in theory. No sound. Does everyone else have sound? Did y'all have sound for the video and y'all have sound right now? Because that's a bummer. Digging the gravy, dude. Keep up the good word. Thank you for the good stuff tonight. No doubt. Much love. Appreciate the kind words, bro. Got to keep the gravy flowing and slay the wizards. Your sound is fine? Okay, awesome. Perfect. Cool. Yeah, so Nate, very simply, bro, what it appears to be is the Earth is encompassed in a toroidal magnetic field, touches down on the South Pole, i.e. Antarctica, and the magnetic permeability and dielectric permittivity is directly relative and relevant to the temperature, which it is cold, right? The ice, and then there's high levels of salt there. Also, there's high levels of salt towards the North Pole. That's not a coincidence. It's also not a coincidence that magnetism was basically a dead science and that we were never taught about it or learned about it. So the only autonomous field modality, self-governing field, self-sufficient field of energy that's inherent in all matter we weren't taught about, or no one pursued that regarding energy resources. That makes sense. It's just like it's clown world. but also something else that's pretty cool. Let's go over here. Oh yeah, this is where we had a discussion. I jumped on and chatted up with Ranty a little bit. Go show him some love. Go sub and smash broken up. Support what you like or it goes away. But that's the live from earlier. And then let's check this out real fast. Named after my boy Bob, the legend from Globebusters. If we look at the wind, look at the wind pattern over this azimuthal projection. So look at what it looks like over a flat Earth. Also, this is the actual wind, right? This is actual existence projected onto this flat Earth. And then understand that the center is the magnetic source, which all ancient civilizations and even really modern exploration spoke about a magnetic mountain, magnetic rock, Mount Muir in the middle, that it causes a whirlpool around it. There's 4 rivers that lead into it, 4 bodies of water. But just look at that and understand the idea of the magnetic source being in the middle. And it's pretty crazy, pretty wild to think about. And of course, that is just the wind. This is just the wind. But nevertheless, you see how it goes around the Earth. This is the magnetic flux. Look at that. So, yeah, I mean, seems pretty logical to me. Let's be honest. So if you have any questions, shoot at me, bro. Everyone says the sound is good. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you for the feedback. Nate, I don't know what you're talking about, bro, but I just explained to you, you're not taking into consideration the differentiation of the way that the land is laid out on the different maps. I think that's a big part you're not seeming to understand. The Pac-Man model, the idea that the sun basically goes in and just appears back on the other side, not a fan of it. Not a fan of it personally. As far as from the east is from the west, well, yeah, but directions are conceptual abstractions in a way. You know what I'm saying? So, because really all directions is, well, there's something magnetic north of us. Right. So, yeah. I think the east from the west thing is meant to explain that they're infinitely separated, infinitely separate. So there's that, and I think that the North Pole might be the Garden of Eden, bro. You're crazy, Austin. Okay, whatever. You probably still think the pyramids were built by slave labor and pulley systems. There's only so much holding your hand I can do. People come here for the gravy, so we like to let the gravy flow here. It's for open-minded, smart individuals that do research and unplug from the box. It appears it's very possible that if the Garden of Eden exists, which I personally do indeed believe that it did, then, the story goes that they ate from the tree they weren't supposed to. They were kicked out and they weren't allowed to come back. Say there was maybe an anatomical, differentiation introduced, right? So the anatomical structure of humans changed. We weren't able to get past this magnetic force field anymore. I don't know. It sounds crazy, but, a lot more evidence for that than everything else we've been taught. This CGI cartoon ball that's provably not real. Axial rotation has never been substantiated. Curvature has never been substantiated. The Earth is not a ball. It's 2020. Let it go. I don't know. Indeed, they will not. Yeah, see, a big thing to grasp, bro. We're just working on trying to figure out exactly what the best model is. We're just being honest, and that's the whole part. I don't think people grasp. That's why I say it so much. I'm sitting here saying I don't know exactly what the Earth is. No curvature, so Occam's razor, it's a plane. No axial rotation ever substantiated in the history of mankind. Occam's razor. Occam's razor, the way that I use this word, what it really means, right? It's a philosophical, logical argument. It's a methodology. It's just simple linear deduction, most logical deduction, void of assumptions, right? So yeah, Occam's razor, no curvature, plane. Occam's razor, no axial rotation ever substantiated. Movement has never been measured. Stationary. So stationary plane. Don't know the exact intricacies of the model because the very nature of the Earth has been hidden from us. We don't have all of the factors and the information needed to formulate a perfect model, but it's a working model. It's 3,000, 3 million, 3 quadrillion, which sounds like something that you Globers would like to hear, right? These crazy numbers. Times more realistic and more in touch with reality than the globe Earth, which is provably not the case. Again, there's an imposed. This isn't just like a guessing game. Oh, it seems like, oh, well, maybe it didn't work out. No. It's a positive claim. You're making a positive, definitive claim saying that the heliocentric model is right and that the Earth has a circumference of 24,901 miles and that there's a radius of 3,959 miles deduced from that circumference. And then you can also, taking that radius, deduce the geometric horizon. The geometric horizon being the physical place that the land would go down and away from you because you're on a ball Earth. Okay, so the geometric horizon cannot just be dismissed with hand wave dismissals. That is not how it works. It has to be there. Your model necessitates a physical, tangible, literal geometric horizon. And now globe earthers are saying, we never see it. Well, yeah, we know you never see it. It isn't there, my man. We all know it. We all know it. So it's pretty wild that people don't really understand it, but whatever. Your idea is legitimate and good concept, and I agree more experiments should be done on that. What we have so far debunks the globe assertion. Yeah, and what he's not taking into account, and I've had the discussion with him, and I said the same thing. It's not a bad premise, but he's not even taking into account that the land mass, the land isn't the same. The land layout, the proportionate land is completely different, entirely different. But yeah, his main premise being, if you guys don't know, if you were to go past the east or past the equator, then of course the circle is getting bigger as you do so. So to travel in the southern hemisphere, to circumnavigate, you'd be able to compare and contrast the distance relative to the projection of what the globe Earth is. You could prove that the distances weren't right. I haven't looked into it enough to know exactly what the differentiation would be. But that is his postulation. And what I can tell you, my man, is whatever happened when you did do it, which is obviously would cost a lot of money, it would just show that the globe Earth is wrong or that the flat Earth is more accurate because that's just the way it is. You can't just discount all other facts because you've come up with something you think could maybe prove it. There's a ton of things that could prove it, my man. If you could circumnavigate the world from north to south, that would prove the Earth was a ball. If you could successfully privately explore Antarctica and come back up over Earth, that would prove the Earth is a ball. If you could zoom in on things upside down, that would prove the Earth is a ball. If you could just show us lifetime re-entry of a rocket into the atmosphere while we get to coordinate that with footage on the ground, that would substantially present a lot more realistic evidence to the idea that you could even go to space. And then again, of course, space cannot even exist because the necessary antecedent to gas pressure is physical barrier, which is the topic of this very stream, pressure. I think pressure is pretty important, right? And pressure makes diamonds. And so, well, the pressure's on our generation, or more specifically our time period, to speak the truth. So either we're going to become diamonds or we're just going to implode. And there's another little side note of pressure. I've said it once already in the stream, but there's no such thing as magnetic attraction. Magnets accelerate towards each other. More specifically, they accelerate to the null pressure point between them. It's all about pressure mediation. Gravity is not a force. It's a resultant. It's an effect. It is incoherent dielectric acceleration or incoherent magnetism. It's not a field. It's an anti-field, and it's actually an acceleration to counter space. It's negligible, it's incredibly weak, but there is an electrostatic relationship that should be accounted for and addressed and offered in our postulated explanation. I think we're doing a disservice to Flat Earth to not address it. And that's kind of what we were talking about on Ranties. I've I adamantly believe that flat Earth needs to integrate the understanding of the ether into their arguments, because heliocentrism cannot coexist with the ether, because the theory of relativity cannot coexist without the ether. And of course, they cannot explain even the theoretical possibility of heliocentrism without the theory of relativity, which of course is a reification fallacy that attributes a property to privation. But even if you want to get past that, which there's no reason to, because it's literally retarded, it attributed a physical property to a privation, a conceptual abstraction referencing nothing, a privation. But anyway, it doesn't work, and ether cannot coexist with the theory of relativity. But modern science knows that there's a background there. They know that there's a field of energy there. So that's what your own religion's leading proponents say. So that's very important to understand that. I don't think people do. That's what quantum foam is, quantum energy is. So I encourage people to go check out that live stream that Ranty did. Is pretty cool. We discussed a little bit. Gleam got on there, started sharing some of how modern science actually acknowledges the ether. They can't call it the ether again because the theory of relativity cannot coexist with ether. So it's very, very important to understand this. And of course, the reason that ether is pretty obviously the answer, I would bet anything on it, is because it's the only thing that can explain observable phenomena. Atomism cannot. Atomism is the cult of bombarding particles, a religious belief system derived from the inaccurate presupposition that everything is material. Of course, things are immaterial. The very postulation of the force field that is the ether is that the ether is immaterial, that it's a field of energy. So you cannot quantify the immaterial. That's very low level thinking. When people say if you can't quantify it, it doesn't exist, all they're doing is exposing their lack of cognitive grasp or cognitive ability to even partake in this conversation, or their conversations are inherently void of any intellectual depth due to inaccurate presuppositions, usually derived from appeals to authorities and misunderstandings and overall ignorance to the very discussion itself. So, I hope that you kind of followed me on that one. I know that I kind of can ramble. But the theory of relativity cannot coexist with the ether. That's why scientists cannot conceive the ether, but it doesn't make the ether go away. You know what I'm saying? So, again, ether can explain wireless power induction in a vacuum. Atomism cannot. That's because the electrical field is independent of the air pressure, because there's a medium that is within a medium that is the ether, that is the universal background. Right, so the air pressure in a vacuum has no effect on the existence of the ether. It's ever existent. Of course, it's there. Again, it's the universal frame of reference, the universal background. That's just what it is. Modern science knows it's there. They just can't say ether. It's like going into a church and screaming "Hell, Satan!" Right? It's just a bad word, again, because they're protecting their baby, the theory of relativity. And until they can swallow their pride and their ego and admit that maybe their entire jobs were a futile pursuit, then we'll never get anywhere unless we can stop turning to these people that are just so egotistical they can't admit that they're wrong. So the ether undeniably exists because all observable phenomena shows us that. You can deny it if you want to. There's a medium that is a field of energy that exists undeniably. Everyone knows it. If you don't want to call it the ether, then you stay in your little semantical bubble where you lack understanding. We're going to call it what the fatherheads of the electrical field theory and the modern electrical grid called it. They all knew it was a luminiferous ether. Okay, so, and of course, I do think a conveniently enough, a little side note to that is luminiferous, meaning light bearing. So the light bearing ether, the substance that bears the light. How convenient that these little grabblers' ideology and belief system is Luciferianism, which is all about Lucifer being the light bearer. So how convenient the light bearer ether was removed from us. We weren't allowed to know about it, and it gives us ultimate understanding. And so there's probably some kind of metaphysical, conceptual importance to that occultic, Gnostic, esoteric belief system derived from that coincidence. But I don't know. That's just purely speculation. But there's a little bit of gravy for whoever's interested in that. But so I think we've done a pretty good job covering this. I think we've pretty substantially shown, very simply, the necessary antecedent to gas pressure is physical containment. I don't want to be too reiterative, but really grasp it. And if you're having conversations with these people, don't let them shuck and jive you because this is just the truth. And also, let the dead bury the dead. There's a lot of gamma males who live in this this society, this existence, that gamma males now feel that they're hard, now feel that they're cool, and now feel that they inherently deserve things, right? Like these gammas, for example, with me, think they deserve all my attention, even though they shuck and jive and they divert and they never have intellectually honest conversations. They think I should sit here and go back and forth with them all day, every day. Gammas now feel entitled to things. But, don't be a gamma male. Don't be subversive. Don't self-project. Don't subversively act out for attention. Be a strong male, right? Strong male leadership is what they fear most. So that's what we need, is strong, independent, free-thinking males to help instill some logos back into society and to help spearhead this pursuit of truth. So, yeah, there you go. In order to have gas pressure, you have to have a container. Absolutely no way around that. Yeah, I agree 1,000,000%. It's one of the damning refutations to the globe Earth, but there's quite a few. And in case you were here late, which I don't think everyone thinks this is as funny as I do, but I think it's hilarious. There's breaking news. There was a Rogan spotted, and he was lured out of his sunken hole of depravity and sodomy with the incentive of lollipops and fancy pants. And so he jumped out, and so it got me to thinking, and so I found this older version of Yoda, who's 2.2 feet if you ask Google, which I actually did ask Google. And that is roughly 10 Rogans tall. 2.2 feet is roughly approximately 10 Rogans. And of course, we had to fix this little grabbler because he likes to talk backwards, which is what the Luciferians do. What you have learned and learn you must, so we fixed it. And it is, you must unlearn what you have learned. And you can see Yoda over here doing his little grappler gesture. But yeah, so, and everything behind it, of course, is the fantasy that you were bogged down with. And it all relies on, again, this fuzzy-haired crackpot who likes to sit like a sodomite and cross his legs and wear female shoes and wanted to have sex with his stepdaughter. So we steered away from legends like this. And since we were just talking about the ether, all perceptible matter comes from a primary substance or tenuity beyond conception, filling all space, the akasha or luminiferous ether, which is acted upon by the life-giving prana or creative force, calling into existence in never-ending cycles all things and phenomena. I would say that pretty substantially veers off into the metaphysical a bit, but this is the guy who had a very strong cognitive grasp of the physical world and, natural phenomena. So maybe we should listen to him instead of incestuous growlers like this. And yeah, it looks like the Earth looks something more like this. The counter space you see labeled the dielectric inertial plane. The inertial plane is this green circle here, which would be the Earth. And then there's an encompassing as above, so below is, in my opinion, referencing the energy field. It's all about energy. Maybe we feed into the energy. The energy that we exert naturally gets inducted into this field that's within the or this field that is the universal background. Makes sense to me. So yeah, cool stuff. Let's see here. I've shown this one a few times. This is AC electricity. This is all relative or relevant to pressure mediation. I think it's important to understand this. A pretty cool picture here. Again, you see the magnets. The inertial plane would be right here in the center, right? This would be what Earth is. North would be everything that we see, of course, above ground. And then the reciprocation would be beneath ground, again, as above, so below. But what I thought was so cool about this is you see this field projected right here, this magnetic field. Now look at this with 3 different magnets together. You can see that the field just continues. It elongates. So the idea of exchanging energy is self-sufficient and self-harnessing is pretty logical, and I really can't believe we haven't already gotten it on a mass scale. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you guys. Pretty simple. I think everyone kind of understands this, but I thought maybe we'd break it down And so I'll chat with y'all, do a brief overcap. And I'll come check the comments one more time, and then I'm gonna get out of here. Maybe I'll show the dude's video one more time because he threw me in the beginning of it. I think it's pretty epic, and so I like to shout him out. Plus, he's super cool, dude. Indio 007, go show him some love. Welcome back, brother. The gravy's still flowing. Shout out to Owen Benjamin. Yeah, Owen Benjamin is a legend, slayer of wizards. Been watching him for a while. I respect his honesty and his tenacity, and just like, you know, his moral fortitude. Yeah, I mean, if you haven't noticed, I'm obviously a bear, bro. I use his terminology a lot. I say Rogan's up, and I bash Rogan every stream, which of course I think is important. I just coincidentally agree with Owen on like everything, you know, but I still think for myself, and I definitely encourage all of you people to do the same thing. But Joe Rogan is very clearly a gatekeeper, so I have no problem doubling down and slaying that little grabbler sodomite wizard because he needs to be slain. He's at the #1 podcast in the world for over a decade, and he's obviously a gatekeeper, and he gets his talking points from Mossad, allegedly. Mossad, CIA, tomato, tomato. I guess making fun of short people is popularized by Owen Benjamin. Haha, it's so funny that short people are short. It's funny to make fun of Joe Rogan because he's a sodomite that is working for the very people that are oppressing us, bro. I don't care if you're short. I actually prefer short women, for example. But I do indeed call out the little grabbler known as Joe Rogan, right? The little sodomite that runs around with his bedazzled jeans because he's misleading men into the nonsensical idea of social justice warrior toxic masculinity while he's pretending to stand up against it. He is an attack on society and strong men. He's there to misguide strong men and to have them start to experiment with all kinds of hallucinogenics in abundance and DMT and to drown in pornography, which desensitizes your mind and literally kills brain cells. Just everything he promotes isn't good. And he always backtracks on information. He's a gatekeeper. He's giving the illusion of being open-minded and allowed to talk about anything while he's actually quite the opposite. So I make fun of him for that. I think that the Joe Rogan measurement thing is funny. And honestly, I can't believe I just described or even addressed your social justice warrior comment that long. This might not be the saloon for you if you're going to start crying and complaining about jokes, because that's what gammas do. Thanks, bro. Love. Yeah, I agree. Thanks for the stream. Lots of info. Okay, obviously, Rogan's problem is not that he's short. It's that he's a shill that used to put the moon landings until they paid him not to, and he looks like a thumb. Yeah, he does indeed look like a thumb. He was controlled opposition the whole time, in my opinion. But yeah, maybe Masai got to him and was like, bro, stop questioning the moon. You're making a little too much sense on the air. I don't know. But it is funny also that he thinks he's super hard, but he's actually pretty clearly a Gamma Secret King. And I have no problem with using the measurements, the Rogans. It's funny, bro. Golly, bro. I didn't think that people would tailspin about my little joke about finding a Rogan. A Rogan had surfaced, bro. I was just breaking the news. Yeah, Rogan's a shill. This is exactly right. Joe Rogan is after the alpha males because it's usually the alpha males that's right. And to specify, it's not Joe Rogan himself after the alpha males. That's just his job. But most definitely, they have to break the strong male to be able to conquer a society. That's why they've been attacking the family and propagating the nonsensical term toxic masculinity, which is an oxymoron, making women think they do not that to be subservient to a man in any way is a dishonor, and that it's undermining them as people. and that, you know, playing the typical role of nourishment and childbearing in a healthy household with a strong male leadership that provides for you is somehow a slap in the face or bad. They demonize the family tradition. They're trying to undermine strong masculinity and introduce the concepts that's nonsense known as toxic masculinity. They're trying to intertwine genders in and of itself. They're trying to make the males that are here be gammas. You wonder why these women aren't wanting to settle down in marriage, because most men are gammas. So let me give you an example. If you were going out to date a girl or to look at the dating pool and 90% of women were like butchy, or like, I don't know, whatever you want to call them, like dykes, right? Like looked like dudes, like, okay, like looked and dressed and acted like dudes. Would you want to date them? So put yourself in the women's shoes. It's definitely the men's responsibility to not be gammas. What do I mean by gamma male? Well, the way that I use the word is a secret king. It's very similar to Vox Day and Owen Benjamin. Gamma male, a secret king, one that thinks they are entitled to all kinds of things. They act out subversively, using trickery to try to get attention. And they always self-project their impure motives onto you, usually drowning in envy. So that's kind of a good little summary of a gamma male. Hey, bro, what's up? What's up, my man? Much love. Secret king, meaning that they think that secretly they're like awesome, that everything's all about them. Great to have heard you on Renty tonight, fellow. Thanks for joining this panel. Yeah, of course, man. No problem. I enjoyed it. Hey, from the upside down, Iru is struggling through the blood flowing to his brain so that he can communicate with us. What a legend. He's fighting through the upside down. And again, go show my boy Iru some love and sub to his channel, because he's a legend. Look, they know you're a legend too. Yep. Yeah, ISS is all a joke. It's fake. It's a lie. It's stupid. It's wizardry. It's so nonsensical. Once you unplug from the box, it's like hard to even understand how people believe it, to be honest. That's pretty epic right there. Shout out to Eddie Bravo, the complete opposite of Joe Rogan. It certainly seems that way. It appears that he was on Joe Rogan way too often, talking about UFC for so many years, that once he started talking about the flat earth, he couldn't just kick him off and not let him on anymore. People would notice. So he just tries to stifle the conversation to make him sound crazy when he's there. Eddie Bravo is a legend from all that I can tell. Don't think about it too long. Any support is greatly appreciated in advance to everybody. And the only ways that you can support, if someone is curious, is Cash App and Patreon. PayPal, stopped letting me accept money. And so, I mean, you can technically super chat, but YouTube takes 33% or more. I haven't gotten any money from them. I obviously don't do this for money, but, I do strongly agree with the sentiment of supporting what you like or it goes away. So there's that. All right, so I say we just do a little summary. We're approaching 2 hours. Brief little run through, and then I'll play that video one more time to show my boy Indio some love. And again, go sub to the people I'm mentioning. Actually, go sub to them. It's not going to cost you money, man, and just show these people love. A lot of these people are putting in a lot of work. I can tell you from experience, bro. I work. I have a real job, right? I have to work. and then I have to compile information and think about what the stream is going to be, and then get on here and talk for 2-3 hours every night. And I do a lot of reading, a lot of research to bring you people this information. And I don't want some star or anything. I'm just trying to say that from experience, I understand that, you know, it can be quite time consuming, and you should show people love and respect for doing that. You know, like legends like Iru and Globebusters and Jeranism and Rodrigo and, you know, Karen B. And there's all kinds of people we could talk forever about who would all show Ranty Flat Earth some love, show Indio 007 some love, numerous other people. Just support what you like or it goes away. And the least you can do is like, subscribe, and share. Also, a little side note, a lot of people have been telling me that when they hit the notification bell, YouTube knocks it off after a day or so. So stay on top of it to make sure you get the notifications. Like and subscribe if you enjoy. If you don't, the saloon's probably not for you anyway. So, you know, don't. Yep, it's really time consuming to do this kind of research. Exactly. I agree 100%. And he will be putting together some serious gravy. So, you know, he's spending time on it. Thank you. I appreciate it. Loves. All right. So here's a little brief overview. This is what the Earth looks like. Certainly appears that way. This is the magnetic flux. This is the oceans. And this is the wind. Pretty cool. We've pretty substantially nailed this into the ground, not gonna lie. The pressure of a gas is the force of the gas exerts on the walls of its container. Oh, yeah, high pressure moves to low pressure, and it needs the walls of a container. NASA themselves, not a space agency, invokes the idea of a wall and a container over and over and over in their molecular definition of pressure, because obviously they cannot ignore this. They invoke their deified religious figure known as gravity. And it's Newtonian gravity is the idea of every particle attracts every other particle in the universe with a force which is directly proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square root of the distance between their centers. Of course, gravity is not a force. Again, it doesn't have autonomous field modality, which means a self-governing field. There's only one autonomous field modality in the universe, and that's magnetism. So really most of these people that are religious and they believe in the heliocentric model, they're polytheistic because they believe in different versions of their deity, gravity. So their little gravity deity, there's Newtonian, Einsteinian. Most of these people don't understand any of the history of their religion, but in 1915, Einsteinian gravity superseded Newtonian gravity. There's little g and there's big G. Isaac Newton himself didn't even postulate an explanation to gravity, that gravity should be innate, inherent, and essential to matter so that one body may act upon another at a distance through a vacuum without the mediation of anything else, by and through which their action and force may be conveyed from one to another, is to me so great an absurdity that I believe no man who has in philosophical matters a competent faculty of thinking can ever fall into it. So underneath his own words, he's telling you he's not actually postulating an explanation. It's simply an observation of an effect. That's all 9.8 meters per second squared is, a metrical representation of the effect of downward acceleration. And science explains things, math describes them. To conflate the imposed causality of a force known as gravity with the metrical representation of the effect is beyond low-level thinking. Let the dead bury the dead. So, of course, it being superseded in 1915 by the theory of relativity. In general relativity, gravity is not a force, which, again, we just read. That's actually what this is claiming. Of course, there is a difference in little g and big G. And it's all guesses, okay? And none of it can substantiate any form of postulation of a cause. That's the important part to grasp here. Anyway, in general relativity, gravity is not a force between masses. Instead, gravity is an effect of the warping of space and time in the presence of mass. Okay, gravity is an effect. Yes, of course it is. We all know that. And warping of space and time is retarded. It's beyond retarded. It's just retarded. That's just what it is. Okay, you cannot warp concepts, right? A conceptual abstraction representing a privation, nothing, space. A conceptual abstraction known as time, which is actually nothing more than the quantification of human existence, the measurement of magnitude between 2 points. You cannot warp these things. Okay, you cannot give physical properties to conceptual abstractions. It is clown world to do such a thing. Yeah, so basically this cannot exist with this vacuum outside of this cartoon ball. It just simply can't exist. Let's get this out of here. No one cares. Go show love to Ranty Flat Earth. Again, I jumped on there and had a conversation with them briefly about the characteristics of light and how ether works. This is the more real accurate representation of where we live. And just real briefly before I do get out of here, yeah, the map was at bobwins.com, BOBWINDS.com. But yeah, when I jumped on Ranty's stream, basically I just jumped on because I heard them discussing, you know, is light a wave, a particle, or a projection? Well, wave is neither a and I'll say this one last time. You know, light is neither a wave nor a particle. Okay, wave is not a thing; it's an effect. It's a type of movement, right? Something's waving. That is just the effect, right? The manifestation of the effect of the movement, the vector, which is a magnitude in a directional path, correct? So light manifests itself to the perception of us based on the energy introduced and the medium it's being introduced to. And of course, that medium has always got ether, right? There's sometimes air, sometimes water, whatever it is, but there's always ether. So light is nothing more than an ether perturbation modality, a disturbance in the ether, a derivation of the state of ether. We are perceiving the illumination of the induction into the ether, to the electricity, to the energy being induced into the ether. We're perceiving the illumination of that reaction. There is no speed of light. There's a rate of induction. There is no physical particle traveling from point A to point B, as we have discussed, is clearly disproven as a postulation whenever you examine the fact that you know, a laser or light slows down 33% going through glass, slows down going through water. That would breach the law of conservation of energy if it's a physical particle known as the photon traveling from point A to point B, but it isn't. It's an ether perturbation modality. This explains instantaneous action at a distance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's important to understand that you know, light is a material. Wave is how it manifests its movement as the effect. Right, it has a transversal movement alongside the longitudinal dielectric field emanating. But yeah, it's just a transversal manifestation. It's a coaxial circuit in which the intersection of the dielectric lines, or the intersection of the dielectricity, is a dielectric pulse that they call a photon, but simply it's a dielectric pulse. It's immaterial. So dumb people say things like you can't quantify the immaterial, but that's just not that. Or if you can't quantify, no, that's what smart people say. Dumb people say things like if you can't quantify it, it doesn't exist, and that's just retarded. Okay, there's no let the dead bury the dead. There's no reason to argue in circles with people. It's just retarded. Okay, so to even truly examine the postulation of ether with any honesty, you have to understand it's immaterial. It's postulated to be the absolute frame of reference, the universal background. It is an energy field, a field of force. It's immaterial inherently, and everything is fields are immaterial. There's no such thing as the electron. That's the terminal end of one unit line of dielectric induction. There's no such thing as a photon. It's just a dielectric pulse. Things are immaterial. You cannot quantify the material. You'll never be able to quantify the entirety of the absolute frame of reference, the absolute background, the universal background. That's just retarded. You can quantify some of the effects. Quantum science, which is really just quantum nonsense, theoretical conceptual abstractions built upon each other, the cult of bombarding particles. They know that there is a field of energy. They just can't call it the ether because the ether cannot coexist with the theory of relativity. And of course, they need their baby, the theory of relativity, to keep intact their religious doctrine of heliocentrism. So hopefully that was a nice little brief overview. Thanks everybody for joining. Much love. It's been cool. And I will catch up with y'all mañana, tomorrow night. And like I always say, unplug from the box. The box is a metaphorical, ideological box that it keeps you plugged into what they want you to think is reality, right? An illusion. I also always use the analogy of the world being a stage. If you're watching a play but you do not know you're watching a play, then how could you ever attempt to understand the motivation of the author of the play? So unplug from the box. We can only show you the box. It's up to you to unplug. Smash the buttons up, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want to support. There's some place under there, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, much love. See y'all tomorrow, and peace out. Unplug from the box.